Tempo offense has been in the mainstream of football thinking for about a quarter of a century now, when guys like Randy Walker and Rich Rodriguez made it popular. But it still is in many ways an underutilized and undercoached aspect of an offensive attack. Today's Best Of episode shares the ideas of 11 coaches on maximizing the advantages of tempo by how it is structured, the plays run with it, how it is game planned, the mechanics of playing fast, and how it even can become an ingrained part of your culture. We start with Hawaii offensive coordinator Ian Shoemaker. We've watched Coach Shu rise through the ranks of coaching from Division II to the FCS and now the FBS on this podcast. I met him in 2006 while he was at my alma mater, D3 Baldwin-Wallace University, and he was using tempo back then. He explains how they view tempo as a stressor to the defense and the beginning of how they layer multiple stressors in their offensive attack.
I've been running no-huddle systems since '99. I learned that all the way back through Rich Rod and Rob Spence and all these guys down the road that kind of got that jump start on Indy and NASCAR tempo and playing super fast and being open and things like that. But you know, as I've evolved over the years, you know, that tempo piece has really taken, hold of a lot of different pieces, right? So you can go super fast, the Oregon flash tempo. You can go to the peak tempo and look everything to the sideline, from a rerun standpoint, a flip standpoint, and building in your peaks to check with me's and formations. But, you know, from our standpoint, that's a kind of the starting point, right? That we are going to be tempo, that we're going to play fast. Here at Eastern, we are 100 to 120 play mentality. That's, on the board in our meeting rooms. Coach Best plays that out for us and asks us to make sure that we are, having that mentality going into the game. How fast can we play? How many snaps can we get? That 1 to 120 mentality going into these games. So a lot of that does affect how we look at game planning. Tempo is part of our stressors going into a game plan week. So how are we going to use it and things like that. So kind of going through some of those things. Indian NASCAR, a packet of plays that you can call off the cuff as fast as you can, maybe limited personnel groups, limited formations. The one-word calls, fastball, or whatever term you're using for that, but your one-word calls that everybody knows, memorized, and get you going fast that way. The other thing that we use tempo-wise is rerunning the same play over again, or flipping the play from say we ran a play one direction on one hash, we'll get on the other hash because of an outside zone or a screen throw, being able to just flip that exact same play but run it out of the opposite formation, opposite direction piece from that deal. And then using your dead count and using your check with me's. Hey, I'm in a formation. I'm trying to see what the defense is getting me without a play call in. Those are things that we use from a tempo standpoint to game plan. When are we going to use those? How are we going to use those? And where does that, move forward for us?
Kansas offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki is another coach who has made the move up the ranks from D3 to the FBS. He sees tempo as a way for an offense to create multiplicity, and he notes that in game planning tempo, paying attention to what plays work most efficiently with a fast pace, as well as considering the other phases of the game, is an important consideration.
Well, it starts with, first of all, is that something that we do well? And so in part of our self-scout that we do on a weekly basis, and at the end of the year, of course, but we try to keep up on it on a weekly basis. Okay, when we're playing fast, well, let's say we're just running inside zone, are we a more efficient and productive team when we play fast, running inside zone, or are we a more efficient, productive team when we play slow? Whatever it might be. So we start there. We go, how are we doing with it? And typically through the years, obviously we do some of it. So we feel like it's helping us. Okay. In our philosophy as we approach tempos, it's kind of like baseball pitching in that if you got the guy who throws the heat, that's going to be good for a while, but at some point they'll get onto that a little bit, and then there's no change up at all of pace. Right. And so we want to make sure that we're varying the tempo. And I think that's just, I'm not saying right or wrong if you play fast all the time or play slow all the time. It's just what we believe is that we're we're trying to just change up the tempo on people. So how good are we currently at it? All right. And then we start to evaluate things on film. Is that team struggling against tempo? Right. If the answer is, hey, yeah, they're struggling when we see teams line up and play fast, and well, you're playing fast pretty good, does it make sense for you to do that week? Well, yeah, it does if you're trying to just get down the field and score points as fast as you can. But there are moments in the game, as we all know, especially if you're a defensive coach listening, where they don't want the offense playing fast. The head coach doesn't want to be going faster. He's not trying to set a record for the most number of possessions in the game. I mean, that's not right or wrong. Whatever your philosophy is, it's just kind of making sure you're on the same page about how much you're going to be able to do it. So are we doing it well? How are they against defending it? What plays are we running really well, that we're executing well, that we feel like we can execute at tempo? I always thought we've been running tempo for a while, but I remember running it back when, I guess probably in front of it a little bit in terms of when it became a fad, and thinking, well, that was before officials knew how to really manage it correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you used to be able to run from 11 to 12, and you just come in and out, and they wouldn't know what to do, and so it would just be chaos out there. But I remember early on finding that there were some plays the defense could almost fall into in defending the play if you guys were doing the right thing, and let's say you ran outside zone left, but the 3 technique just fell off and he didn't really run, and all of a sudden he finds himself in the backfield making a play. And so maybe identifying plays that you didn't want to run against that opponent quickly or another way. But it certainly, having a little bit of tempo certainly makes your quote-unquote 2-minute situations easier to do when you have the procedure in place to do those sort of things. It's not as big of a deal. You said that before, Keith. You kind of talked about changing the procedures, which is something I think offensively that is an easy way to add multiplicity to your offense, because really when you talk about changing the procedures, you're talking about things that happen before the snap. And really anything that happens before a snap is choreographed, like a dance.
Yeah.
So kids can learn how to play fast. They can learn how to play slow. They can learn how to motion. They can learn how to shift. They can learn how to do all that stuff. Check plays. They can learn they can be choreographed. That is not straining or taxing on their bodies. Okay.
Right.
But then the challenge becomes, we're going to do these choreographed movements, whatever, playing fast, motions and shifts, making sure that the things that we're choreographing allow us then to hopefully help execute the play that we're calling, whatever, 4 verticals, all hitches, inside zone, left, inside zone, whatever it might be. So that's what we're trying to do with our tempo a little bit. Hopefully that answers the question about how it kind of fits into our game plan. We want to be able to carry it. Very rarely do we go into a game and say, oh, man, we can't play fast at all against these guys. Because like you said, Keith, at the end of the day, your job is to score one more point in the defense.
Right.
And so that's what you got to do.
What's the fastest you can go? Well, new Wisconsin offensive coordinator Phil Longo points out that you can move as fast as the officials. So understanding what their pace is can allow you to build your procedures and call plays that can be executed within that 12 or so seconds that it takes for an official to spot the ball and put it in play.
The speed of which the referees can get the ball set is as fast as you can possibly run the offense. So for anybody that's stressing over trying to run the offense so fast that they can be faster than the next guy, it really doesn't matter. You only have to signal and be able to line up and run it as fast as the officials will allow you. So if the average time in your conference for the officiating crew is 12 seconds, then as long as you can communicate what you're doing to your players and allow them to get lined up before that 12 seconds is up, you're already running the offense as fast as you can humanly run it and as fast as the officials are letting you run it. So, sitting at a practice the other day with a coach that said, hey, we can run this thing about 6, 7, 8 seconds right after the last play. Well, that's great. But if the officials don't let you snap it until 12 seconds, you only need to be as fast as 12 seconds. So we just try to build our stuff so that we can beat the officials. And if we can beat the officials, we're running the system at the highest speed we could run it at, regardless of, what we've done in practice. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but they're the limit. They're the
Absolutely.
Speed limit. And you're not going to run it any faster than they can get it lined up. So we're just trying to be a little quicker than them so we can snap the football when they back away.
Texas passing game coordinator and receivers coach Brennan Marion views tempo as a part of their attack, which wears a defense down and forces the defense to play a fifth quarter in terms of the amount of reps. In order for the offense to operate efficiently, they're trained to understand everything instead of just being a robot running plays. And he explains the importance of that here.
I've seen the fruits of what happens of going fast, playing for Coach Malzahn as a player. He's still successful now, 10 years later, with going fast. So, I really just believe in that. And, that's what we major in here at Howard.
So, Coach, talk to us a little bit about how you're creating that fifth quarter. What are the keys for you in being as fast as you can be? What things are you teaching your players that you make sure that we're going to operate at a very fast pace?
I think the one thing that you want to do as a coach is you want to have continuity on the line. You want the linemen all to be in collaboration and communication together. You want all the skill players to be in communication and collaboration, but you also want to create the competitive edge. And that, when I say that, I'm saying multiple guys feel like that they're the guy. We want all our guys to feel like they're the guy. And how we create the fifth quarter is why we don't create robots. We teach our players the whole scheme. We teach them everything that goes on. So our receiver's going to know exactly what the line's doing, the quarterback's doing, the running back's doing. Same thing all the way around the board. Then we can play a lot faster because guys know when they see that signal what to do. If they're lined up in a spot, if they even line up in the wrong spot, they still know what spot they need to get to. Kind of like, your mindset on defense. If you create a shell and you still have to get back to your spot or down to a spot, we're trying to do the same thing on offense.
The offensive coordinator of the USFL New Orleans Breakers, Noel Mazzoni, was at the forefront of tempo and continues to utilize it. He points out how he teaches what he calls the full book, then gives the players something they can play fast with by having an abbreviated Cliff Notes. He explains the approach and how he sees all of it coming together, as well as what plays work best with tempo.
I make them read the book first, okay, and then they get the Cliff Notes.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to know that's trio, right? This is where it is. So I'm going to let them do that for a little bit. And then I'm going to show up one day and say, hey, you guys remember that play we've been running, trio, zip, 13, smoke, X gift? You remember that play? Oh, yeah, Coach, we know that play. Hey, we're just going to call that New York. Great. So when I call New York, just run that play. And to me, that, and maybe other guys have different ways of doing it, but that's kind of how I like to install my tempo plays.
Coach, for you, when you're looking at tempo plays, do you feel that there's a certain type of play that works better in tempo versus others?
Yeah, because number one is in tempo. And so we all talk about tempo. And that's kind of the RPOs and tempo is kind of the cool
right.
stuff now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even Chris Collinsworth talks about it during the Super Bowl, right? Every completion nowadays is an RPO completion, but which I think is awesome because I think it does put pressure on the defense, and defenses are starting to catch up to it too.
Sure.
All right, they're starting to catch up to matching your routes and still defending the run and doing those type of things, which happens on all offenses. Everything's
exactly.
secular, right?
Yep.
But so I think you've got. It's to me, it's a base. It's something that we're going to run a lot of because I think I need as many reps as I can get with it, and then I need more. It's also one where there's not going to be a lot of different line calls for my offensive line. I mean, I kind of look at football. I kind of look like at offense like this is that number one, I'm trying to outnumber your defense. Number two, I'm trying to out leverage your defense. That's all I'm trying to do. And then I'm just trying to create space, right, and get the ball into one-on-one situations, whether it's a throw or it's a catch and tackle. So that's basically what the whole thing is based on. Let me just create space, put the ball where the space is in a guy's hands, all right, and make them make a one-on-one tackle. Okay, I don't want 9 guys tackling power. Okay, I want one guy trying to tackle a bubble screen out in the perimeter, and so I'm trying to spread the defense. The hard thing is the thing you really have to be conscious of. I've found is in this tempo, get it out quick offense is you do spread the defensive horizontally, but you also got to understand we got to spread it vertically also. Mm-hmm. Because then all defenses do is they start involving safeties in their defense, and pretty soon you got 11 guys within 8 yards of the football. So you also have to incorporate that. But I want so anyway, back to the original question is the tempo stuff. Is I think how you call the plays is your tempo. So in other words, is if I go out and I go, hey, give me trio right. All right. Hey, let's run 13 smoke X gift. All right. For the time for all that to happen, all right, is not going to be as quick as when I just yell, hey, give me New York. Now my guys can line up. They go. They're not having to read signals, too many signals, all that kind of. The quarterback doesn't have to stand there and read all the signals for all the tags and everything. So I think how you structure your play as in a one-word tempo play, as a 2 or 3-word tempo play, or just calling the play like it's written in the playbook will change your tempos. And my guys learn that too. All right. They learn when it becomes a one-word play, they got their foot on the gas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're lining up and run this as fast as we can. And they're going to basically be plays where there's not going to have to be a lot of adjustment by my offensive line. All right. Because all I want to know is my 5 offensive linemen and my tight end or my 5 offensive linemen. Hey, you got the 4 down on the mic, the quarterback and receivers, you got the rest of the guys. So it's really kind of 2 game plans, 2 plays going on simultaneously.
Coaching needs to be tangible and measurable in training tempo. Incarnate Word assistant Keith Bearfield ran the statistically fastest offense in football while he was the offensive coordinator at Quincy, and he helped them turn an offense around and break records. In this segment, he explains how tempo should be coached, as well as the mechanics of running the fastest offense.
One thing that we tried to do, the reason that I believe our tempo was so proficient and so effective for us was the way we taught it, the way we installed it, and the way that we kept teaching it all the way through the season. Okay, one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen coaches make when I'm trying to teach tempo, whether I'm visiting the practices or whatnot, it's they try to do the same system that's not tempo, make it tempo just by saying do the same thing but faster, right? So the coaching point from the sidelines, or at practice is just them yelling, tempo, right? That's not, to me, that's not a coaching point. To me, that's not a tangible, measurable coaching point. And the rule of thumb that I always go by is if my mom can sit in the stands and make the same point, then it's not a coaching point, right? Like for receivers, they drop a ball. What's a normal fan going to yell? Catch it. Well, that's obvious, right? You want him to catch it. So change your coaching point to hand placement. See it all the way in. And so we wanted to make our coaching points and tempo measurable.
Coach feels a big part of their success is the way that they teach it. And for them, they define it and make it measurable. The coaching points are measurable, and everything they do within tempo has some specific coaching points that are tangible to the players.
First off, we told, tempo starts at the end of the previous play, right? So we told all 5 offensive linemen, as soon as that whistle blows, that play dead, you need to be jogging to the new ball spot and get your feet fully set. And what do I mean by fully set? So we need to have our feet set. We don't need to be in a stance. We don't need to bend our knees and our hips yet, but your feet need to be set in such a way that when you do get the play and it's time to get in a stance, you don't have to readjust your feet, pick them up, and put them back down, right? So your cleats should stay in the ground, and you just sink down into your stance from there. Why? Okay, so let's say they're standing there at the ball spot. They get the play, and it's time to get in the stance, and everybody else is ready, okay? The center readjusts his feet and widens. What's the guards got to do? Oh, they got to readjust their feet. Then the tackle's got to readjust theirs, okay? Tight end, if he's in the core, he has to readjust his. If they had to take a step forward, now the quarterback and the running back have to readjust their alignment. All right, so what does that do? That takes up time. Maybe 3-4 seconds. That might not seem like much, but think about what you can do in 4 seconds. Like there's some NFL combine guys who can almost cover 40 yards in 4 seconds, right? And so we want to eliminate and shave off as much time as possible. And that's one thing that we coached in practice, and that's one thing we can see on film is if they're readjusting their feet to get in their stance. Okay. So the second thing is for the 5 eligible players on the field who did not have the ball at the end of the play, we should see, okay, game film cuts off to the next play about 2 to 3 seconds after the play ends, right? It kind of plays on for 1.5 to 3 seconds or so. In that time period on the game film, we tell our guys if you don't have the ball and you have an eligible number, we should see your head snap to the sideline to get the next signal before the film cuts off, right? And so, again, the coaches, we have to be tempo too, right? And so we have to have a signal for them to get in order to make it worth looking. But that's something we can measure on film. That's something we can watch at practice and we can improve on, all right? And then the third thing is everybody knows the ball carrier should give the ball to the ref to help the tempo out. But what we found was, that sideline referee, when you get tackled on the sidelines, he's going to ask you for the ball. And what's he do with the ball if you give it to him? He puts it down at his feet, gets another ball in the game from the ball boy, tosses it to the umpire. Umpire kind of takes his time lining it up with the ball the sideline judge put on the ground. And once he gets that ball down, then we pick up the other ball, hand it to the ball boy. Now we're ready to go. And so kind of to eliminate that extra 3 to 4 seconds, we tell our guy, even if he's yelling at you to give him the ball, you just completely ignore that referee. You pop up as fast as you can so we can't get to you, and you run the ball inside the hash and toss it to the umpire so he can just spot it and we can go right now. Okay, and that was a major point that we worked on every single day in practice.
Tennessee offensive line coach Glenn Ellerby was part of one of the most explosive offenses in the country in 2022. The Vols were number 1 in total offense with 538.1 yards per game and number 1 in scoring with 47.3 points per game. He explains why he loves tempo for offensive line and provides the details on coaching the mechanics of tempo with the O-line in this segment from Lawrence First and Goal.
Really, for us, why tempo is one, I feel like just up front gives us a huge advantage blocking defenses, blocking D linemen that don't have their hands in the ground or are tired. Like you go up to any offensive lineman and you ask them, man, do you want to run block a 3 technique that has his hand in the ground and is been resting for 30 seconds after a huddle, or try to pass block a defensive end that's doing the same thing? And once they get a chance to do it versus a guy that's tired or not set, even though sometimes IDs and things like that can be a little bit more difficult, boy, it's well worth it. Plus just the simple mathematical fact of, man, the more times you snap the ball, the more chance you have a chance to gain yards and score. And I think it can create opportunities that for guys that typically aren't as talented as the dudes across from them, actually line down and play a whole lot faster. For the center, and I've got some clips of how we coach it, and we'll get into questions that people typically have, like, man, how do you actually coach tempo? How do you practice it? Really, it's a scrimmage environment. It's coaching these mechanics from that continuous tape. But the center, first thing that'll happen as soon as the ball breaks, where really it's any ball, he doesn't know where exactly it landed. He's going to obviously know where it ended up. Like if the ball ended up outside the left hash, he's going to track it down the left hash, look to the line judge, and try to find that intersection of wherever the ball landed on this side of the hash to where the line judge set his foot, and he's going to set his feet and kind of get a feel for where that line judge is, where the ball's going to be spotted. And typically after a while, they get pretty damn good at it. So you'll see the way we coach it, where the center's going, guards and tackles, man, their only job is to find the center. Center out should be working his way to the ball where that intersection is going to be. Where I think we are unique in some of the skill positions, again, won't touch on it as much, but the ball they know where it gets tackled in terms of the line of scrimmage. So if anything's what ends up being a gain forward, they're going to always find the umpire, try to get the ball back into him no matter where they catch it, who runs it. If it's a positive play, the ball is ran and soft tossed back into the umpire. For whatever reason, it's a run and it's a negative play. We coach the running backs to know the center judge is always coming over his left shoulder, so he should get up, look to his left, and try to get back to the center judge as fast as possible. With the skill doing that piece of it, kind of helps the offensive line do their part of it.
Arkansas offensive line coach Cody Kennedy believes that training for tempo has to start in the meeting room and be carried over to walkthrough in getting linemen to think and make their calls quickly. He explains how to do it in this segment.
I think to train for tempo, you've got to ask questions with urgency, and they've got to know that it's got to roll off the tongue. It's got to be second nature to them. When you ask questions in the meeting room, you can't give them a lot of time to react to it. They've got to know. They've got to be locked into it. You've got to, insinuate that in your culture as well. When you ask them questions in the meeting room, it can't be, we got to go. It could be a tempo call that we have to make. It could be on a play where we're trying to get the defense at a disadvantage with our tempo, and they've got to be confident. I think the biggest thing is, and this is what I say in my room a lot, confidence equals speed and speed equals power. Obviously, all offensive line coaches want us to play with power, but to start that sequence, you've got to be confident in what you're doing. And if you're confident in what you're doing, the calls you're making, the looks you're seeing, you can do that with speed, and then you're going to create power through that speed. So I think that's the chain we try to connect. And, if you're not confident, you're not going to be very fast at what you're doing. If you're not very fast at what you're doing, you're not going to be powerful. So we've got to connect that chain. And it all starts with confidence and knowing what you're doing and know the task at hand. And, I try to insinuate that a little bit in everything we do, whether that's asking questions in the meeting room or walkthroughs, giving them the play and then going right into the snap count to try and simulate that tempo and not give those guys a lot of time to sit there and because they're not going to have that in a true tempo situation. So you've got to do a great job as an offensive line coach to have your guys ready for that situation. And those are just some ways offhand that I like to use to get my guys ready for that situation.
McMurray University head coach Jordan Neal joined us when he was the coordinator of the number one offense in D3 in 2016, averaging over 600 yards per game. He explains what he calls his 10-10-100 and perfect play drills, which teaches players to line up and play fast, as well as get into shape to play at a fast pace.
But when we get out on the field, one of the things that we try to do, we have a rapid transfer drill, and we also have another drill called 10-10-100. And these are great drills that we use, and they completely have negated and nullified any conditioning that we might have to do at the end of the practice. So we're never going to spend 10 or 15 minutes running gassers or running curves or doing up downs and what I would consider to be petty type stuff like that, when you can get your conditioning in running a full out, full tilt drill where you're getting, like in our 10-10-100, we run 10 different route combinations for 10 straight minutes, and we're trying to get 100 reps. And so that's the focus, is that we really, it's not that we don't care about our execution. Quite the contrary. I mean, we are trying to be efficient and throwing and catching the football. We're not going to tolerate being sloppy just for the sake of going fast. But our focus is exactly that: going fast, learning how to think when you're tired, and learning how to focus on the little things when it's a little bit hectic and the ball's flying around. You got 3 or 4 quarterbacks going at a time. And I think when you kind of make that the norm, I think kids tend to adapt to the setting that they're in, whether it be, whether that bar is really high or that bar is really low. And, since day one that we started at Hendricks, we kind of just said, hey, here's the expectation. We're going to go out, we're going to play fast, we're going to be competitive. And our kids have just kind of gotten used to that. That's really the norm.
Coach, explain the setup of your 10-10-100 drill.
So So what we do is we get on one hash or the other. We can only work one hash per day, but like on a Tuesday, we'd say left hash, and we'd have quarterbacks going at a time, and we'd have two receivers going at a time on the boundary side, short side of the field, so left hash. And for example, our first route that we would run is we'd run two hitches. And, we actually have we've got 4 to 6 quarterbacks going at any in our program at any given time. So those guys snap to each other, and it's fast and furious. We've got one line of the 2 quarterback lines that calls the snap count each time. It's, for us, we just say ready, set, go. We'd run 2 hitches, and then those quarterbacks would switch, right there in the line, and they, one of them would have been throwing the outside guy, the other one switches and throws the inside guy. So they get 2 quick throws, and then they exchange out, and now they're snapping to their quarterbacks. And everybody, all the receivers in the program, whether slot, X's or Z's, they're all playing the outside, and our tight ends and our slots, they're all playing the inside. And everybody will run that hitch, and you catch it from the 10-yard line going in, you catch the ball, and you go score. And you hustle back, drop the ball off, hop back in line. When we get back up to the top, our next route combination might be, smash corner. The next one might be slant flat. The next one might be vertical out. The next one might be vertical dig. But we script that, so as soon as those guys are coming up, back up to the top of the line, I'm calling out the next combination, and it just rolls, and it is just as hard and fast as you possibly can go. So that's what we would do for 10 minutes on a Tuesday going on the left hash, and then the next day on a Wednesday we'd get that over on the right side.
So a lot of the tempo you have is built into your drills as well, and it's just a way that you guys kind of operate throughout. Now, does the offensive line work that kind of tempo within what they do as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So while we're doing a 10-10-100, the offensive line would be doing perfect plays. They'd be on the opposite hash, between the hash and the sideline, working that other column of the field, and they'd be doing what we call perfect plays. And it's the same type of deal. It's a jet tempo, NASCAR tempo, whatever you want to call it, type situation. We'd have it scripted, and it'd be very similar, like the 10-10-100. They'd be going from the 10-yard line in, and then they'd be riversiding and going from the goal line to the 10-yard, out to the 10-yard line, and they'd be going through every single one of our, and that doesn't change for them because, again, we're limited to running power to the right, power to the left, inside zone right, inside zone left, dart right, dart left, GY counter left, right, so on and so forth. But they'd get all 10 combinations of run plays that we're running, run the play, sprint 10 yards, immediately riverside, and they're going right back. So we'd have 2 groups of those going at a time, and that's kind of the conditioning that we'd be getting going at the, at that same, in the meantime, as we're doing 10-10-100.
And where are the running backs in the mix?
The running backs would be doing perfect plays with the linemen. So they'd be getting the same mesh exchange with the quarterback. We'd usually have a freshman quarterback or even a GA that would be, playing quarterback and handing the football off during that time. But those guys would be over there getting their handoffs and working on hitting the hole and scoring.
Tempo is not reserved for no huddle only. Army tight end coach Matt Drinkle joined us on the podcast for the first time in 2017 when he was the head coach at Kansas Wesleyan, where they had one of the most potent offensive attacks in NAIA. He discusses how tempo can be utilized from a huddle to stress a defense.
That has been so successful for those guys. It's unbelievable. In fact, the guy who's the offensive coordinator at Northern State right now, Myers Hendrickson, used to work for me down here, and he loves that. He thinks that is one of the greatest pieces of tempo and wrinkles you can put in offensively. Whereas I've always been more of a look guy, like look to the side, but that has been so. And you see a lot of teams. Every team that runs that burst huddle or whatever, they are so successful with it because it's so, you can jump into unbalanced, you can hide passing strengths to mess with defenses. It's just that has been a huge a way to really, again, hide personnel and sprinkle in different tempo. And then especially if you see that, so you expect it to go fast, but then if you either hard count out of that or look out of that, you can steal yards and free plays.
Yep. We finish up with the head coach of Klein Cain High School in Texas, James Clancy. They finished 10-2 in 2022. He started the program at this new high school in 2017 and immediately made being up-tempo a part of their culture. It's something they live in everything they do, and he explains how they coach tempo in practice, as well as every phase of their program. This has allowed them to have success on the field right away.
Well, we're a up-tempo offense team. We believe in doing everything at a high rate of speed. We believed that was going to give us a sense of urgency in everything that we did. And just because we're an up-tempo team, on offense didn't mean that we didn't have, a fast-paced mentality, in our other phases, defense, special teams, and things like that. But, from the way that we checked roll, from the way that, our kids jog down to athletic period every day. We're always have a sense of urgency in everything that we do. And we feel like when you have a sense of urgency with everything, from how you check roll, from how you transition to the weight room, from how you transition to your meetings, if you have a sense of urgency, that's going to carry over into your performance. We believe in making sure that when it's football time, whether it's athletic period or after school practice, off-season training, that, it needs to be noticeably different mindset than what you go about, day to day, and I think that our kids have done a nice job of understanding that, and they know when they cross that line into the hallway and they got to jog down to athletic period, it's time to go get work done, and I think that we did that from the very beginning, even, from when we just had 2 grades, those really inherent things that we felt like these become the tradition. So when those first group became seniors, that group of freshmen, sophomores, and juniors that were coming behind them, they just, they started jogging down because that's just what we did, and I think those allowed us to have a foundation to when our talent caught up to our talent, our experience caught up to our expectations. That's when we were ready to go try and win.
Yeah, the coaching side too. If someone's going to this for the first time, they haven't done it before, so there is an adjustment in coaching in an up-tempo environment as well. I don't believe, I'm just going to coach it on the film. I heard that, beginning a tempo era. Oh, we just coach it off film. I don't think those guys did. I think certainly they're going to get more off of film, because you always have to be coaching. You always have to be giving feedback. So any advice on that side of things for a coach, to be able to coach in an up-tempo environment?
I use the phrase, I live it with the players. I live during the play. I talk to them about, hey, widen out your split. All right, hey, ball's coming to you. I live the play with them, and I coach as they're transitioning to the next play. There's no stop, everybody listen, I try to communicate as I go and coach as I go, so the kids are getting coached as they're going on to the next play, and then I reiterate those points when we do get to come back and watch the film. One of the things our staff does a great job is, Huddle allows us to go in and type comments and stuff on the video, and we're able to send our players out playlists and things like that with notes on them. And those messages always need to be consistent from what you're saying in practice to what you're saying in those notes. But that is definitely something that, you got to coach on the run, and it's very similar to a game. You're trying to make an adjustment, tell somebody to widen out or whatever. And there's really no difference in how we coach and approach stuff in practice than how we do a game, because we're constantly moving, constantly telling our kids, what to do and how to go about doing things. So I think that'd be the biggest adjustment for some people, because they want to stop and they want to talk to their guy about a step or whatever, and it's just hey coach, you got to tell him he's got to do half an inch more and you got to get him going, and so I think that's the biggest adjustment for a coach that's never been in it. The best piece of advice that I could give a staff if they'd never done it before and now they're going to it is go watch somebody practice. Don't watch game film. Obviously you can get some ideas off of game film, but I'm talking about go watch a tempo program practice, from how they come out to stretch to how they do pre-practice to how they transition to drills. Then you kind of get the whole idea of how it works, because you can't see that on film, but once you see the moving parts and the inner workings of it, then you're like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Absolutely. Whether you have been running tempo for a while now, or it's something you want to use this next season, there are plenty of coaching points here from very successful coaches. Most of these coaches have presented in the clinics we have run as well, and those talks are linked in the show notes, as are the entire episodes. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com, and follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.